It was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
It was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
A Tale of Two Cities. Written in 1859, this novel is a beautiful story set against the bloody and horrifying backdrop of the French Revolution, where on one side there is oppression, cruelty, and the terrors of revolution, and on the other, amidst those very dark shadows, shines an unparalleled glimpse of true love, loyalty, and eternal sacrifice. Dickens shows us how the atrocities of the aristocracy in London and Paris, and the injustices inflicted upon the poor, stirred such a terrifying storm within the masses, that its bloody fury razed all of France to the ground. On a cold, foggy November night, a mail coach is traveling from London to Dover. Suddenly, out of the darkness, a horseman stops the coach and says there is an urgent message for Mr. Jarvis Lorry. One of the three passengers seated inside looks at him and says, "Yes, tell me, what is the message?" It is a secret message, and Mr. Lorry reads it and understands it at once. In reply, he writes the words, "Returned to life," and hands it back to the writer. Mr. Jarvis Lorry is an employee at a bank, and he receives word from the bank to meet Lucy Manette in Dover. Lucy Manette is the only daughter of a French doctor, Dr. Manette. Dr. Manette is a renowned French physician who had been unlawfully imprisoned in a French jail for 18 years and has now been released.
I have an important message for
Mr.
you.
Lorry meets Lucy Manette and tells her that her father,
message?
Dr. Manette, is alive
me?
and has been
Miss
freed
Manette,
after 18 years
Your
from a
father,
prison in Paris.
Dr. Manette is alive.
Hearing this,
He has
Lucy
been released
faints
from
from
the
the
prison
shock
after
and intensity of her
18 years.
emotions. Mr. Lorry explains that he has come to take Lucy with him to Paris so that they can bring her father back to
Soon
England.
leave for Paris
He is
to bring her
currently
father
hidden in
back to
Paris
London.
with his old servant, Ernest Defarge. Mr. Lorry and Lucy arrive in Paris and go to Defarge's wine shop. The owner, Ernest Defarge, is a strong and revolutionary-minded man, and his wife, Madame Defarge, is an extremely cold-hearted and sharp-witted revolutionary woman. Defarge's shop is, in reality, a secret hub of rebellion against the government. Due to the trauma and hardship of his imprisonment, Dr. Manette now believes himself to be nothing more than a cobbler. But through Lucy's love and care, his memory returns, and he recognizes his daughter. At last, with Defarge's help, Mr. Lorry and Lucy manage to take him out of France and bring him to London. In London, Dr. Manette and Lucy live peacefully. 5 years pass by. And it is here that Charles Darnay enters the story. Charles Darnay is a handsome and refined young Frenchman. He is on trial in court for treason. He is accused of spying against England and passing secret British military information to the King of France. If found guilty, he will face a most painful death, execution by dismemberment. Present in court as witnesses are Mr. Lorry, Lucy, and Dr. Manette. When Lucy is called to testify, she tells the court that 5 years earlier, while bringing her father back from Paris, Darnay was on the same ship and had helped the ailing Dr. Manette greatly. Lucy's testimony proves Darnay's kindness, but inadvertently, she also mentions that during the voyage, Darnay had exchanged some papers with unknown people. Just moments before the verdict is to be pronounced, a young lawyer named Sidney Carton enters the courtroom. He bears an astonishing resemblance to Darnay, and it is this very fact that he uses to prove that the witnesses against Darnay are mistaken. Because of the striking similarity between Sidney Carton and Charles Darnay, the treason case weakens, and the court acquits Darnay. Sidney Carton is a capable lawyer, but he is a drunkard and a man without purpose. Because of this, he considers himself a worthless man with no reason to exist in this world. After the trial, in a drunken state, Carton meets Darnay and realizes that Darnay is that beautiful reflection of the life he himself could never attain. In London, Sidney Carton and Charles Darnay become frequent visitors at the Manette household, and a bond is formed. Meanwhile, in Paris, the oppression of the aristocracy continues, and the anger of the poor is becoming uncontrollable. Darnay's uncle, the Marquis Evrémonde, a cruel feudal lord, runs over and kills an innocent child of a poor man with his speeding carriage. He insults the poor, saying they could have injured his horses. That very night, the father of the murdered child sneaks into the Marquis's chateau and stabs him in the heart, leaving behind a message signed by the revolutionaries known as Jacques. Later, he is captured and publicly executed, in revenge for which the revolutionaries vow to destroy the entire Evermond family. Madame Defarge, who is secretly compiling a list of all their enemies, notes down every name. On the other side, in London, Darnay, now a teacher at a school, and Lucy develop a bond of friendship and love. Darnay asks Dr. Manette for Lucy's hand in marriage, and he agrees. Sidney Carton, too, loves Lucy in his heart, but he does not consider himself worthy of her. Carton confesses his selfless love to Lucy, and makes it clear that he does not wish to marry her. He only wants to see her happy. Lucy and Darnay are married,
You
and some
are
time
now
passes
announced
peacefully.
as husband and wife.
Lucy gives birth to a daughter, whom they also name Lucy. While Lucy's quiet life continues in London, the revolution in Paris grows more horrific. Under Defarge's leadership, the people storm the Bastille prison. At the revolutionaries' signal, the poor peasants set fire to the late Marquis's grand chateau, reducing it to ashes. Meanwhile, the royal tax collector, Mr. Gabelle, is arrested despite his attempts to save himself. Charles Darnay receives a letter from his old servant Mr. Gabelle, who is now in a Paris prison facing death. Haunted by his conscience, Darnay decides to go to Paris to save his servant, without telling Lucy, walking straight into a deadly trap. As soon as Charles Darnay arrives in France, he is arrested under a new revolutionary law, branded a traitor, and thrown into solitary confinement at La Force prison in the presence of Ernest Defarge. Lucy and Dr. Manette rush to Paris to save Charles. There, Dr. Manette uses his old identity as a former Bastille prisoner to win over the bloodthirsty revolutionary mob and set out to help Darnay. In Paris, the guillotine is beheading people daily, but Dr. Manette, thanks to his status as a Bastille prisoner, becomes an official doctor for the revolutionaries and manages to keep Charles safe in prison for an entire year. Finally, Dr. Manette brings the good news that Charles's trial has been scheduled. Thanks to Dr. Manette's passionate testimony and his public influence, the revolutionary court acquits Charles Darnay. But on the very night of his release, Charles Darnay is arrested once again by 4 armed soldiers, following complaints lodged by the Defarges and a third mysterious person. The Manette family's joy turns to dust once more. Sidney Carton blackmails the spy John Barsad, Solomon, who had once testified against Darnay using his secret knowledge, and with his help, clears the way for secret access inside the prison. After securing access to the prison, Carton buys a sleeping powder from a chemist and, the next morning, in court, it is revealed that the third witness against Darnay is none other than Dr. Manette himself. From Dr. Manette's old letter, it is revealed that Darnay's father and uncle had wronged Madame Defarge's siblings and had sent Manette to prison. As a result, the court sentences Darnay to death.
For the sins of your ancestors, you are sentenced to death by the guillotine!
Upon hearing the death sentence, Lucy faints in the courtroom. Sidney Carton, according to his secret plan, enters the prison. Mr. Lorry is with him, but is unaware of Carton's true intentions. Carton goes alone to Darnay's cell, drugs him unconscious, changes clothes with him, and takes his place. He then calls the guards, telling them the prisoner has fainted from shock. Mr. Lorry, believing the unconscious Darnay to be Carton, safely escorts him and Lucy out of Paris. Sidney Carton, in place of Charles Darnay, and in the last moments he was thinking, "It is a far, far better thing that I do than I have ever done. It is a far, far better rest that I go to than I have ever known." If you like the story, like, subscribe, and share. Thanks.